Chapter 625. Seeing Mo Shi appear, a trace of fear appeared in Shi Mingyue's heart. The space-time duo had failed. Her senior apprentice brother had also failed. How was this possible? As far as Shi Mingyue knew, the strongest person she had ever seen was her senior apprentice brother. An existence that could kill a grade 6 super-evolved dragon with the body of a grade 4 super-evolved dragon. However, her senior apprentice brother had not returned, and this guy had appeared in front of her. Could it be that this guy's level had surpassed that of a grade 6 super-evolved dragon? No, that was impossible. How could he be a grade 6 super-evolved dragon? Shi Mingyue shook her head in fear. She ordered all her subordinates in the mansion, "Kill him! Kill him!" There were some ruthless people under Shi Mingyue. Moreover, some of them did not recognize Mo Shi. Therefore, a grade 3 super-evolved dragon with a mohawk shouted, "Don't fight with me. He's mine." To be able to kill this fellow who had trespassed into the first mansion would be another meritorious service. Although Lord Shi's methods were ruthless, he had always been very generous. Killing this guy would definitely give them a lot of rewards. No one else went to fight with the mohawk, because the mohawk was a troublemaker. He was Lord Shi's favorite. Who would dare to fight with him? They could only curse in their hearts. This guy got first again. What if King Bootlicker? The mohawk had already condensed a pair of wings with energy and flew up. The next moment, a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. The entire land was illuminated as if it was daytime. Meanwhile, the body of the mohawk that had just flown up was instantly torn in half and fell from the sky. When the surrounding people saw this, they were all shocked. What was going on? They did not see the guy in the sky attack. Moreover, after the mohawk fell to the ground, his body showed no signs of healing. It was important to know that dragons had extremely strong vitality. Their self-healing abilities were also very strong. Even if their bodies were torn in half, they would be able to heal themselves at the fastest speed. However, the cells in the mohawk's body seemed to have died long ago. What was going on? In the midst of the shock, there was a grade 3 super-evolved dragon who was not afraid of death. Like the mohawk, he roared, "How dare you trespass the mansion? I think you don't want to live anymore." Then he stomped his feet on the ground, and his body quickly soared into the air. When he was in the air, a layer of yellow energy appeared around his body. Then, the yellow energy in the sky condensed into a giant fist that was 1,000 meters long and 500 meters wide. It smashed down on Mo Shi. Even the rainwater in the sky seemed to have stopped under the impact of this earthy yellow energy fist. This was the killing move of the rank 3 Earth Dragon. However, at this moment, the Earth Attribute Dragon's body was suddenly torn into several pieces. It fell from the sky, and at the same time, the khaki-colored energy fist disappeared. The rain that seemed to have solidified in the sky began to fall again. When several pieces of the Earth Attribute Dragon's corpse fell from the sky and landed at their feet, everyone was once again shocked. This Earth Attribute Giant Dragon was best at defense, and its body was far stronger than other giant dragons, but now it was torn into several pieces in an instant. Just how much power was needed to do that? Moreover, no one saw how the guy in the sky attacked. That fellow kept flapping its blood-red wings, quietly floating in the sky, motionless. They did not see any signs of him attacking at all. However, he killed 2 rank 3 super-evolved giant dragons in an instant. What on earth was going on? Amidst the panic, someone said, "This guy is too strong. We can't deal with him alone. Everyone, let's kill him together." When he said this, the rest of the people roared one after another. They leaped into the sky. Moreover, they did not attack Mo Shi in their human forms. Instead, they transformed into their giant dragon forms. In the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone, the giant dragon form was the strongest combat form. Therefore, when giant dragons encountered a powerful enemy, they would usually transform into their giant dragon forms. In just an instant, more than 30 giant dragons appeared. Under the curtain of rain, each of these 30 giant dragons was 10,000 meters long. There were fiery red fire elemental dragons, golden metal elemental dragons, and yellow earth elemental dragons. More than 30 giant dragons almost occupied the entire dark night sky. The sky was filled to the brim. This was definitely the most spectacular scene Xianxia had ever seen. If the people on Earth saw this scene, they would probably be scared to death. In the secret chamber below the ground, Xianxia watched this scene on the screen, and her heart began to beat rapidly. More than 30 giant dragons were basically rank 3 super-evolved giant dragons. If they still could not deal with this guy, then they would have to bring out their strongest secret weapon. This time, Xianxia in the sky finally moved. He did not transform into his giant dragon form. He still maintained his human form. He stretched out his hands slightly. The chaotic time attribute energy appeared in his left hand, and the black space attribute energy appeared in his right hand. Time in his left hand and space in his right. The left and right combined, and time and space reversed. The next moment, these two attribute energies quickly rose and intertwined in front of him. Then, an energy vortex appeared. This energy vortex appeared to be the color of chaos. However, it soon turned black. The next moment, a black hole appeared in the sky. This black hole was about 100 meters in diameter. The moment the black hole appeared, a huge suction force suddenly spread out in all directions. All the rain within 100 kilometers was instantly sucked into this black hole. Crack! A bolt of lightning that spanned across half the sky appeared. However, this bolt of lightning did not have time to illuminate the entire world before it was quickly swallowed by the black hole. When all the giant dragons saw this, their expressions suddenly changed drastically. A black hole that could even swallow lightning. What kind of terrifying existence was this? In horror, these giant dragons quickly fled in all directions. However, before they could escape, their bodies involuntarily moved toward the black hole. A fire giant dragon kept flapping its wings, trying to break free from its shackles. However, its tail was quickly swallowed by the black hole, and the power generated by its flapping wings was far from being able to withstand the suction force of the black hole. It seemed that in just a few seconds, this giant dragon was swallowed by the black hole. One must know that this giant dragon's body length reached 10,000 meters, and its wingspan reached more than 8,000 meters. The diameter of the black hole was only about 100 meters. However, the black hole had no difficulty swallowing this 10,000-meter giant dragon. The rest of the giant dragons originally thought that their bodies were huge and would be stuck in the black hole, and it would be impossible to be completely swallowed. However, when they saw this scene, they suddenly panicked. Chapter 626. Seeing that Xianxia's black hole could actually devour giant dragons, the other giant dragons' expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly fled in all directions. However, in the blink of an eye, the suction force spread toward them. Although they were giant dragons and had power far beyond the imagination of humans, compared to the suction force of this black hole, their power was so insignificant. The earth attribute giant dragons were sucked in, the metal attribute giant dragons were sucked in, the ice attribute giant dragons were sucked in, and the wood attribute giant dragons were sucked in. In front of this black hole, no giant dragon of any attribute could escape. And not only the giant dragons in the sky, but also the giant dragons on the ground who had not yet transformed into their giant dragon forms were sucked in one after another. They hurriedly struggled to escape. However, all their movement skills, teleportation, and flickering were useless in front of this black hole. Just like in any movie, these people were sucked up high. Then they were swallowed by the black hole. Along with them, the buildings, flowers, and trees on the ground were also sucked up and swallowed. What was a black hole? It was a black hole that swallowed everything. At this time, the black hole created by Xianxia was swallowing everything that could be seen in Xianxia's residence. In the secret underground room, Xianxia saw this scene and his face turned pale. Especially when he saw the 5 rockery arranged according to the 5 elements in the residence being sucked up. Under the rockery, 5 hidden pipes with a diameter of more than 10 meters were also sucked up. Xianxia's eyes were filled with horror. Hey, wait. I haven't even taken out the secret weapon and it's already been sucked into the black hole. What the hell is going on? He regretted it, he really regretted it. He regretted provoking this guy in the first place. In fact, he didn't notice Immortal at all at first. He heard from his subordinates that Kong Hai went to invite Immortal, so he followed suit and invited Immortal. He never thought that he would provoke a fiend like this. Kong Hai, so this is your most powerful killing move? You deliberately led me to provoke this fiend. At this time, the only thing Shi Mingyue could think of was to escape. Facing such a terrifying guy, he could only run. He hurriedly took out a cube that looked like a Rubik's cube. However, this cube was black in color, and it even emitted a faint black glow. One had to know that there was nothing in the world that could emit black light. However, this cube was emitting a black light, which was enough to tell that it was different from the rest. That's right, this was an escape route. It was an escape space created by a giant dragon with spatial attributes. As long as he entered through this entrance, he would appear at the exit in the next moment. The exit was on another nearby planet. Therefore, as long as he activated this escape space, he could quickly leave the Cloud Sea Star. Run away from this fiend. However, when he activated the space and tried to enter it, he was shocked to find that he could not enter it no matter what he did. His face turned even paler. This is impossible. This space can't be fake. What's going on? Naturally, he did not know that Immortal had mastered spatial skills. As long as it was within a radius of 100 kilometers, Immortal had absolute control over the entire space. Even if you can teleport, you know some movement skills, and you have some kind of escape device. However, under the absolute control of Immortal's space attribute skill, there was no way for him to escape. Just as Shi Mingyue was panicking. Rumble, rumble, a series of loud noises kept coming. The loud noises seemed to be very close. It sounded like the sound of a house collapsing during an earthquake. However, when he looked up, he found that it was not the ceiling above him that was collapsing, but the ceiling that was collapsing. Hundreds of cracks appeared on the roof, so it broke into hundreds and thousands of pieces and flew into the sky. One had to know that his secret room was more than 20 meters from the surface, which meant that the 20-meter thick floor had already shattered into thousands of pieces and was sucked into the black hole. Shi Mingyue looked at all this in disbelief. He used to have the space-time duo under him, but that guy with spatial attributes did not have such terrifying strength. The strength that Immortal displayed made him despair. At this time, Shi Mingyue could only use his time attribute skill. The chaotic light on his body lit up. The chaotic energy spread out and quickly occupied a radius of 100 meters. He had to control time. At least control the time within 100 meters of him, so that the collapse would slow down a little, so that the black hole would slow down. Only then would he have time to escape. However, just as the chaotic light on his body began to spread out, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. The chaotic light on Immortal's body shone brightly. And this chaotic light was 100 times brighter and 100 times stronger than the chaotic light on Shi Mingyue's body. Almost in an instant, it swallowed the chaotic light on Shi Mingyue's body. At this moment, Shi Mingyue's chaotic light did not have any effect at all. Moreover, his body was rapidly wrinkling and aging. Shi Mingyue knew that this was the time attribute at work. He used to play this trick often, accelerating the flow of time on someone's body, letting that person quickly age and eventually die. But now he actually saw the time on his body being accelerated rapidly, and he was aging quickly. His body was no longer full, but quickly shriveled up. More and more wrinkles appeared on his body, and soon he looked like an old man in his twilight years. How was this possible? This guy actually knew how to use time attribute skill again. Wasn't he a spatial attribute? How could he know the time attribute? Could it be that he had mastered both the time and space attributes at the same time? God, what kind of guy did he provoke? It was okay to accidentally offend a pervert. No, Shi Mingyue only had time to let out such a cry before his body quickly shriveled up like a dried corpse. His cells lost their activity, and his body lost its life. A person who played with time in the palm of his hand was finally played by time. Logically speaking, Shi Mingyue's time skill was better than Immortal's. After all, he had been playing with it since he was young, and had been playing with it for tens of thousands of years. However, he had no resistance in front of Immortal's time skill at all. This was all because there was a huge gap between his level and Emoshir's. One had to know that between super-evolved dragons, the difference between each level was like heaven and earth. He was only a level 4 super-evolved dragon, while Emoshir was level 6. No matter how good his time attribute skill was, it was as insignificant as an ant in front of Emoshir's level suppression. Following that, the black hole continued to devour everything in the Shur family's residence. About 5 minutes later, everything in the Shur family's residence had disappeared. There was only a huge pit with a diameter of 5 kilometers left. Chapter 627. In the rainy night. A bolt of lightning instantly tore through the night sky, illuminating the entire world as if it were daytime. Emoshir was suspended in the air just like that. He did not care that the rain was drenching him. He looked at the 5-kilometer-wide crater on the ground. Emoshir sighed in his heart. The power of this space-time black hole was so great. Not only did it devour dragons and buildings, but it even devoured the ground. As long as it was within its suction range, it would devour everything. And this was the skill he had just obtained. If he could practice it more, how powerful would it be? Emoshir estimated that with this skill, it would be easy for him to deal with a 9th-grade super-evolved dragon that was 2 or 3 grades higher. After becoming a super-evolved dragon, the difference between each grade was like heaven and earth. Generally speaking, being able to deal with an enemy that was 1 grade higher was already very powerful. Emoshir could now deal with an enemy that was 2 or 3 grades higher. It was obvious how much this black hole had boosted his strength. At this moment, the system's voice rang in Emoshir's mind. Dragon slaying points, 10501000. Level up available. Do you wish to level up now? Emoshir was overjoyed. His dragon slaying points were finally full. Level up. Time required for this level up, 5 minutes. The system prompted again. Emoshir took one last look at the crater below. Seeing that there was nothing left for him to stay in this apocalyptic world, his figure disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he was already thousands of kilometers away. No one knew that the bright moon that shook the entire Cloud Sea planet on this rainy night had already disappeared. 10 minutes later, in the lakeside villa, Emoshir's face was filled with joy. I've finally reached 7th grade. It had only been 4 months since he came to the 10,000 Dragon Star region, and he had already risen to 6th grade. For those dragons that needed hundreds, thousands, or even thousands of years to advance to 1st grade, Emoshir's speed was no different from sitting on a rocket. He estimated that, at 7th grade, he could easily deal with a 9th grade super-evolved dragon. He might even have a chance against a 10th grade super-evolved dragon. However, this was not enough to satisfy him. Instead, it made him more eager to continue evolving to become an ancient dragon. In the eyes of others, a 10th grade super-evolved dragon was already 10% powerful. Ancient colossal dragons, on the other hand, rarely appeared. However, since Emoshir wanted to stir up trouble in the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone, an ancient dragon would be the minimum requirement. Now that he was already a Tier 7 super-evolved colossal dragon, would the ancient colossal dragon still be far away? While Emoshir was getting excited at the lakeside villa, about 10 kilometers away from Shurmingyue's mansion, a troop of about 3,000 people was passing by silently. Kacha, a bolt of lightning lit up the world as if it were daytime. Through the lightning, one could see that these people were all wearing black cloaks in the rainy night. They were like a group of ghosts. The leader of the group was a tall and sturdy man with a cold face. This person was Kong Hai. Thousands of years ago, there had been 3 great wars on Cloud Sea planet. Another time was a war against foreign enemies. Han Kong Hai had performed exceptionally well in the past few battles. He killed so many enemies that they were terror-stricken. Thus, he built up his reputation and slowly became a loyal subordinate of the Star Lord. Now that the Star Master was dead, he had become the candidate for Planet Master. Originally, he planned to deal with Shurmingyue in 2 or 3 days, but the weather tonight was too good, so he changed his mind at the last minute and gathered 3,000 people to kill Shurmingyue. However, Just as he and his 3,000 people were moving forward silently, a voice suddenly came from his earpiece. Master Kong, something bad has happened. Shi Mingyue frowned and raised her fist, indicating for everyone to stop. What's wrong? Master Kong, when we came here to investigate, we found that Shi Mingyue's mansion had disappeared. Disappeared? What did that mean? My lord, this is the Shi family's residence. It has completely disappeared, leaving only a huge pit here. When Kong Hai heard this, he was slightly stunned. What was going on? How could the Shi family mansion disappear? In his surprise, he sped up and quickly arrived above the Shi family mansion. At this time, the Shi family mansion was no longer there. In the place where the Shi family mansion used to be, there was only a huge pit with a diameter of 5 kilometers. They used all kinds of technology to investigate if the Shi family was up to something. However, after more than 10 minutes, all the technology found was that the Shi family mansion had completely disappeared. Master Kong, according to the space-time detector, we found that a black hole had appeared here. It's very likely that the Shi family mansion was swallowed by that black hole. As for the 700 people, they were probably swallowed by the black hole as well. A technician reported. Hearing this, the surrounding people felt a wave of shock in their hearts. Although the dragons had studied black holes much more than the people on Earth, it was still very difficult to create a black hole. Even if two dragons with time and space attributes worked together, they would need to reach 100% tacit understanding before they could create a black hole. However, in fact, it was impossible for two people to reach 100% tacit understanding. Even twins were impossible. Theoretically speaking, if one wanted to create a black hole, they would have to possess both the time and space attributes. However, the space attribute was already very rare, and the time attribute was even rarer. In addition, dual attribute dragons were also very rare. With all these factors combined, it was almost impossible for a dual attribute space dragon to create a black hole. Then what was going on? Amidst their astonishment, everyone began to inspect their surroundings. They didn't find any valuable clues. In the end, they could only conclude that the Shi family had provoked someone they shouldn't have. They were destroyed by that person. And currently, in the Nebula Sea Star, he couldn't think of anyone who could destroy the Shi family in such a short time. Then, it should be done by an alien force. This way, it would save him a lot of trouble. Originally, with more than 3,000 of them against the Shi family, although they would definitely be able to destroy them, there would still be casualties. Now, they wouldn't have a single soldier. Shi Jia had been destroyed without any effort. Then, he could just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Of course, he didn't dare to make a move for the time being. What if the powerhouse who destroyed the Shi family was on the Nebula Sea Star? I destroyed the Shi family, and you became the Nebula Sea Star. No one would be happy with this. So, he waited for another half a month. In this half a month, he used his identity and status to inquire from various channels to see if there was a mysterious powerhouse that suddenly appeared. However, there was no news. It seemed that the powerhouse had already left the heart of the Nebula Sea Star. Thus, Kong Hai began to inherit the position of Nebula Sea Star. He inherited the position of Nebula Sea Star in a very special way. There were 2 chairs left behind his seat. When his subordinates asked why he left these 2 chairs behind, he replied, "The reason why we were able to easily obtain this ruling power was all thanks to these 2 powerhouses. If they return, I am willing to hand over this ruling power to them unconditionally." Chapter 628. In the following days, Mo Shi still went to the Cloud Sea Academy for half a day and then stayed at the lakeside villa to tutor. He seemed to be aloof from worldly affairs. At the same time, the news of Shi Mingyue's destruction had spread throughout the entire Cloud Sea planet. Many forces were very surprised by Shi Mingyue's destruction. Many people were also very surprised. They all knew that there would be a battle between Shi Mingyue and Kong Hai after the sudden death of the Star Lord. Moreover, that battle was likely to be huge and long. Many forces were already prepared to benefit from it. Many people had also moved their stools and were ready to watch the drama unfold in the front row. However, no one expected Shimingye to be destroyed without a sound. It said that someone went to the Shi family mansion to take a look. Everything in the Shi family mansion had disappeared, leaving only a 5-kilometer crater. If you want to talk about big pits, many giant dragons can create them. But you have to know that the Shi family mansion is not an ordinary force. Their mansion must have an extremely powerful defense system around it. Therefore, to be able to break through the defense system of the Shi family and destroy the entire family without a sound, the person must be very powerful. It's very likely to be a grade 7 super evolved dragon. I think it's likely to be grade 8. Therefore, the rumors about the mysterious powerhouse became more and more exaggerated. In the end, it was said that the mysterious powerhouse was a grade 10 super evolved dragon. At the same time, these people also had a deeper understanding of Kong Hai's force. Kong Hai actually has such a powerhouse under him. If it's really a grade 10 super evolved dragon, why would he work for a grade 4 like Kong Hai? That's hard to say. Maybe they're just good friends. Maybe Kong Hai saved him before and he's just returning the favor. Therefore, when we meet Lord Kong Hai in the future, we'd better be respectful. He's still calling him Lord Kong. He's probably going to inherit the position of Star Lord soon. In fact, these people were right. A month later, Kong Hai officially announced that he would inherit the position of Star Lord. In the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone, the position of Star Lord was not officially appointed. It was held by the capable. The previous Star Lord had died, and Kong Hai was the strongest among the remaining forces. Naturally, Kong Hai would be the Star Lord. Moreover, due to his previous achievements, no one had any objections to him taking the position of Star Lord. The entire Cloud Sea planet was talking about the strength of the Void Ocean and the strength of the hidden powerhouse. However, Kong Hai was the only one who knew that there was no hidden expert under him. Even if he ascended to the position of Star Lord, there would always be 2 chairs behind him. If one day those 2 mysterious powerhouses appeared, he would not hesitate to hand over the position of Star Lord to them. He had fought on the battlefield and gone through fire and water, so he valued his life more than anyone else. It wasn't that he was afraid of death, but that he cherished life. Although the position of Star Lord was indeed very tempting, it was not worth mentioning compared to his life. At the same time, he sent people everywhere to seek talents. He had recruited a large number of talents from Cloud Sea Planet. 2 teachers of Ocean of Clouds Academy had already resigned and been recruited by Kong Hai. Of course, Kong Hai had also invited Mo Shi several times. However, Mo Shi did not agree. Right now, he only wanted to quietly increase his strength and make a fortune. As for Star Lord, the position of ruler, and the struggle between the various factions, he did not want to get involved. On this day, Mo Shi finished teaching a few students in his class. Although it was called a class, it was actually Mo Shi telling the students stories. What kind of class could he teach? He had already taught the students everything he could. Even the second transformation of various dragons was enough for the students to learn for hundreds or even thousands of years. Therefore, every day, if Mo Shi was in a good mood, he would go to the classroom and tell the students a story or 2. His experiences from Earth to the Flaming Origin continent and then to the Myriad Dragonstar region were far beyond the imagination of these dragons. Just 1 or 2 things could make them sigh in amazement. If he was in a bad mood, he would not even go to school. The dean of the academy did not dare to slight him. Moreover, the dean had personally said to him, "If you have something to do one day, you just have to let me know." This was equivalent to telling Mo Shi that if he wanted to come, he could come. If he did not want to, he just had to let me know. After all, the dean of the academy was only a rank 3 super evolved dragon, and Mo Shi was at least rank 5 or even rank 6 in the dean's opinion. Facing such an existence, he naturally did not dare to slight him. This morning, Mo Shi finished telling the story and was about to return to his office. Suddenly, he heard a few students say, "The Star Lord is here, the Star Lord is here, let's go take a look." Star Lord? Didn't the Star Lord die suddenly? Please, now that Lord Kong Hai has become the Star Lord, when did your family get connected to the internet? So it's Star Lord Kong Hai. I admire Lord Kong Hai the most. He fought 3 internal wars and 1 external war. Every time, he killed so many enemies that they trembled in fear. He is known as the ever-victorious general. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go take a look. In their excitement, many students ran toward the academy's gate. Emo sure shook his head. What a bunch of inexperienced brats. In fact, it wasn't just these students. Many of the academy's instructors also ran toward the gate. After all, even though they were instructors of the Cloud Sea Academy, they had never seen the Star-Lord before. Now that they had the chance to see the Star-Lord in person, they naturally would not miss it. Even the dean went out to welcome him. He might be a rank 3 super-evolved dragon, but the Star-Lord was a 4th grade. Naturally, he had to welcome him. Emo sure was the only one in the entire academy who was still leisurely strolling along the tree-lined path, slowly walking towards his office. His only thought now was to improve his strength. As for his external living conditions, material conditions, and the like, he did not care. Thus, even if he met the Star-Lord, he did not care. What did it mean to be strong without desires? This was what it meant to be strong without desires. At the academy's gate, the instructors and students quickly lined up to welcome the arrival of Star-Lord Kong Hai. Kong Hai was a rather easygoing person. He greeted the dean, the instructors, and the students. The dean said with a smile, "Star-Lord, I didn't know you were coming. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." Kong Hai waved his hand. It's fine. Everyone, go do your own things. I'm here today to visit Mo Sure, Instructor Mo." Everyone was stunned when they heard this. The Star-Lord had just been appointed, and he was here to visit Instructor Mo? However, after thinking about it, they understood. Kong Hai had recently been recruiting talents from all over the place. Mo Sure was able to help a student advance to grade 1 in just 10 days. Kong Hai naturally wanted to recruit such a genius. However, Kong Hai only sent one person to invite the other talents. Now, he was here to visit Instructor Mo personally. This surprised everyone. Chapter 629. Under everyone's gaze, the new Star-Lord Kong Hai arrived in front of Mo Sure's office. Kong Hai's subordinate shouted, "Instructor Mo, the Star-Lord is here to visit. Hurry up and welcome him." To everyone around, there was nothing wrong with this shout. After all, Kong Hai was the new Star-Lord. Although Mo Sure was powerful and had some special abilities, he was still just an instructor of the academy. It was already an honor for Kong Hai to visit Mo Sure personally. Shouldn't he come out to welcome him? However, the dean had other thoughts. He knew that Mo Sure's strength had most likely reached the 5th or 6th rank Superflower Dragon. Under the premise that strength was respected in the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone, how could Mo Sure go out to welcome the Star-Lord? As expected, Mo Sure didn't come out. All the instructors and students around felt that Mo Sure was a bit too much. However, Kong Hai glared at his subordinate. "Who told you to talk too much?" The subordinate immediately nodded and lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Star-Lord. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to Instructor Mo." Kong Hai's voice was slightly stern. The subordinate immediately cupped his fists towards Mo Sure's office. "I'm sorry, Instructor Mo. I was too rash and offended you. Please forgive me." Then, Kong Hai cupped his fists towards Mo Sure's office. "Instructor Mo, I'm the new Star-Lord Kong Hai. Your subordinate has offended you. It's my fault for not disciplining him properly. I apologize to you here." When everyone saw this scene, each and every one of them was extremely shocked. A Star-Lord apologizing to an instructor. Was there any justice in this world? Was there any law? One had to know that on a planet, the Star-Lord was the law, and the Star-Lord was the law. The Star-Lord's face was greater than the sky. Although the strong were respected, generally speaking, the Star-Lord was the strongest person on a planet. Even if the Star-Lord made a mistake, he wouldn't admit it. Instead, his subordinate would apologize. Now, Kong Hai was the one who made a mistake. In the end, not only did his subordinate apologize, but he also apologized. Everyone knew that the new Star-Lord was thirsty for talent, but there was no need for him to be so humble in front of Instructor Mo. What they didn't know was that Star Lord Kong Hai actually knew something. In Kong Hai's opinion, many things in this world were connected. This was his experience after living for over 10,000 years. In the past, Instructor Mo was able to help a student break through 1 or even 2 levels in 10 days. This was already an existence that subverted everyone's knowledge. Later on, 2 mysterious experts appeared and destroyed the entire Shi residence in a single night. There might be some kind of connection behind this. That was why Kong Hai was so polite to Shi. Shi's voice slowly came from inside the room. "Come in." Shi had already plundered Kong Hai's memories. He knew Kong Hai's true thoughts. It had to be said that this old man who had lived for tens of thousands of years was really something. He could even see the connection between the two. He was indeed amazing. "Instructor Mo, I'll come in then." As Kong Hai spoke, he pushed open Shi's door and entered his office. Behind Kong Hai, his 2 subordinates also wanted to enter, but Kong Hai stopped them with a look. The 2 subordinates immediately stopped in their tracks. They closed the door behind them. Kong Hai entered the room and once again cupped his fists to Shi. "Instructor Mo, I came without an appointment. If I offended you, please forgive me." Shi had a good impression of Kong Hai. Although this person valued power too much, he went to the battlefield to kill enemies and made them tremble in fear. He was also courteous and thirsty for talents. These were all true. At the same time, this person was actually able to guess that he was related to the 2 mysterious experts. He was indeed quite capable. It was just that Kong Hai would never dream that he was the 2 mysterious experts. Shi smiled faintly and said, "I've already said that I like freedom and don't like restrictions. Starlord Kong Hai, please go back." When Kong Hai heard this, he was even more certain of his guess. Most people would only call him Star Master when they saw him. Almost no one dared to call him by his name in front of him. Yet, Instructor Mo added his name in front of the Star Lord, Kong Hai. It could be seen that either this person was extremely powerful, or the faction behind him was extremely powerful. They were so powerful that they didn't care about his position as the Star Lord. Thinking of this, Kong Hai was secretly shocked. As expected, there was a high possibility that there was a connection between Instructor Mo and those 2 mysterious experts. Kong Hai continued, "If Instructor Mo isn't willing to work under me, you can stay in the academy. You can do whatever you want. I only ask that you put your name under me. I will give you the highest honorary position. Your monthly benefits will also be far better than others." It could be said that Kong Hai's attitude was very humble. However, Shi still waved his hand. He couldn't be bothered to talk to Kong Hai anymore. Instead, he directly used Dragon Sense to transmit his voice. "You don't have to keep the 2 seats behind your Star Lord seat. I won't sit there." When Kong Hai heard this, he was slightly stunned. Then, his expression changed drastically. He looked at Shi in disbelief. "The 2 mysterious experts who destroyed the Shi family are..." Shi shook his head. "Not 2. These words couldn't be clearer. If Kong Hai couldn't even understand the meaning of these words, then he had lived for tens of thousands of years in vain. His knees immediately went soft and he knelt in front of Shi. "Lord Mo, Senior Mo, I was blind. Please forgive me." He could already tell that the person in front of him was the one who destroyed the Shi family. In other words, he had both the time and space attributes. And one had to know that he could teach students of any other attribute. That meant that he had energy of any other attribute besides time and space. This was no longer something that could be described as a genius. Even a monster was far from enough. If one had to use a word to describe him, then it would be God. It was already very rare for an ordinary giant dragon to master 2 attributes. There had only been a few times in history for someone to master 3 attributes. And this Instructor Mo had mastered almost all attributes. If this wasn't a god, then what was? No wonder his attitude towards him was so. No wonder he didn't care even if he met the Star Lord. Thinking of this, he hurriedly said, "Lord Mo, Senior Mo, if you have any instructions in the future, just say the word." I will not refuse. By the way, if you want the position of Star Lord, I will now announce to everyone that you are the Star Lord of the Cloud Sea. Immortal couldn't help but smile and shake his head. Do you think I will be interested in a small Star Lord of the Cloud Sea? Kong Hai thought about it and agreed. Why would a person comparable to a god care about a small Star Lord position? Immortal knew that this guy actually compared him to a god through the public memory. He found it a little funny. But this was also good. Many things on the Cloud Sea would be easy to do in the future. Kong Hai, I know what you are thinking. I can tell you that I am not a god, but I am definitely more terrifying than you think. Kong Hai was stunned again. Then he lowered his head even more. Sure enough, this person was comparable to a god. He even knew what he was thinking clearly. But don't expose my identity for the time being. Kong Hai hurriedly replied, I will definitely not reveal a single word to anyone. If I reveal anything, I will be at your disposal. Immortal nodded in satisfaction and then asked, Kong Hai, are you willing to be my student? Chapter 630. Kong Hai, are you willing to be my disciple? Immortal asked a question that Kong Hai did not expect. Kong Hai was stunned when he heard this. An instructor of an academy wanted to take him, a Star Lord, as his disciple. If others knew about this, they would think that this instructor was too arrogant. After all, theoretically speaking, a Star Lord was the most powerful being on a planet. Who would have the right to take a Star Lord as their disciple? However, Kong Hai was only stunned for a moment before he asked, Instructor Mo, if I become your disciple, can I also advance by 1 grade? Of course. Immortal nodded slightly, however, it will take at least 10 days before you can advance by 1 grade. Kong Hai was overjoyed when he heard this. He had originally thought that Instructor Mo's ability to upgrade the giant dragons was only limited to those below super-evolved giant dragons. After all, it was extremely difficult for a super-evolved dragon to advance by 1 grade. If Instructor Mo could really make him, a super-evolved dragon, advance by 1 rank, then he would be no different from a god. Then Kong Hai is willing to be Instructor Mo's disciple. As Kong Hai spoke, he bent down and bowed deeply to Immortal. Immortal slowly raised his hand and gestured for Kong Hai to rise. Come back in 10 days. I will help you advance by 1 grade. Kong Hai was overjoyed. It was important to note that he had been stuck as a 4th grade super-evolved dragon for thousands of years. How could he not be excited when he had the chance to break through 4th grade and reach 5th grade? There is one thing you need to pay attention to, Immortal said. Our relationship will be kept a secret for now. Yes, Instructor Mo, Kong Hai was slightly surprised. Most people would be more than happy to have a relationship with a Star Lord. However, Instructor Mo kept such a low profile that he did not understand. However, he did not ask too much. After all, it was their first meeting. It would not be good if he asked too much and Instructor Mo would dislike him. Alright, you can go back. Immortal said. Kong Hai nodded. Then I will take my leave. As he spoke, he respectfully left the room. The people outside did not expect their Star Lord to be so respectful in front of Immortal. He did not even dare to turn around as he left. Instead, he retreated step by step. When the crowd outside saw the Star Lord leave, they were all surprised. No matter how much the Star Lord thirsted for talents and treated them with respect, there was no need for him to be so respectful to Teacher Mo. But they couldn't ask too many questions. After Kong Hai left Immortal's room and closed the door, he turned around and said to everyone, if there's nothing else in the future, don't disturb Teacher Mo. His subordinates lowered their heads and said, Yes, Master. When the instructors and students in the academy saw this, they were very surprised. Cultivate once and let me see. Kong Hai Dongji sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Immortal had the Void Dragon's 9 transformations. The Void Dragon's 9 transformations was the culmination of all space attribute cultivation methods. Therefore, he could easily see through Kong Hai's problem. When you cultivate to the 2nd cycle, use all your energy to attack the Si-Hai acupoint instantly. Hearing this, Kong Hai muttered in his heart. In the past, his Si-Hai acupoint had been injured. Every time he cultivated, when the energy passed through the Sihai blood, he would feel a huge pain. Later, an expert gave him some pointers. He said that when the energy passed through the Sihai acupoint, it would be reduced by half. As expected, every time his energy passed through the Sihai acupoint, it would be reduced by half and he could cultivate normally. Why did Teacher Mo want him to use all his energy to attack the Sihai acupoint now? However, since Teacher Mo had already said so, he could only do as he was told. Soon, when he cultivated to the second cycle, he used all his energy to attack the Sihai acupoint. Suddenly, a piercing pain came from his heart. Beads of sweat the size of beans on his forehead instantly poured down. When he cultivated to the 15th cycle, the pain almost made him faint. Fortunately, he had experienced countless battles and suffered countless injuries. He gritted his teeth and endured it. Finally, after 5 minutes, the pain seemed to have reached its peak. Just as he could not take it anymore, boom, a wave of energy seemed to spread out from his limbs and bones. Chapter 631. 631 The Power of a Star-Lord. Star-Lord Kong Hai followed Mo Shi's instructions and cultivated for 81 cycles. The pain in his heart started to spread throughout his body, spreading to his limbs and bones in an instant. Every pore and every cell in his body seemed to be enduring immense pain. It was as if 10,000 ants were gnawing at his flesh, as if 10,000 needles were piercing his heart. Even though Kong Hai was a Star-Lord, even though he had lived for tens of thousands of years and experienced countless pain and agony, even so, he still felt as if he was better off dead than alive under this immense pain. In truth, this pain only lasted for a mere 10 seconds. However, these 10 seconds felt like 10 years to him. One had to admit that Kong Hai was a true man of iron and blood, tempered through war and blood. Even though he was enduring such immense pain, he gritted his teeth and didn't make a single sound. His consciousness seemed to be fading away amidst this immense pain. Just as he was about to faint from the pain, boom! A loud explosion seemed to ring out from within his body. The next second, energy flowed freely through his meridians like a flood that had broken through a dam. As this energy flowed through his meridians, the pain in every pore of his body finally disappeared. Every cell in his body seemed to be breathing happily. An indescribable sense of comfort spread throughout his body. He had experienced this feeling many times before. He only felt this when he was advancing. He opened his eyes. His entire body was drenched. Even the ground beneath him was covered in a layer of water. It was enough to see how much pain he had just endured. In contrast to the immense pain he had just experienced was the immense pleasure he felt now. He had finally advanced to 5th grade super-evolved dragon. He hadn't advanced for tens of thousands of years. He had thought that he would never be able to advance even if he lived for another 10,000 years. With his talent, reaching 4th grade super-evolved dragon was the limit for him. Who would have thought that he would advance by a grade in just 5 minutes under Instructor Mo's guidance? Instructor Mo was truly a god. At the thought of this, Kong Hai hurriedly got up and knelt before Mo Shi. I'm afraid I won't be able to repay Instructor Mo's kindness in this lifetime. If Instructor Mo needs my help in the future, feel free to ask. Kong Hai will not refuse. After becoming a super-evolved giant dragon, every level up was equivalent to an extra 10,000 years of lifespan. Therefore, Mo Shi not only allowed him to advance by 1 level, but also allowed him to live for another 10,000 years. How could he repay such a great favor? Mo Shi smiled and shook his head. There will be a time when you can repay me. Kong Hai heard this. He nodded heavily. Teacher Mo, if there's anything I can use you for, Kong Hai will definitely not refuse. At this point, Kong Hai's loyalty to Mo Shi could be said to be 100%. After all, Kong Hai was the lord of a planet. If an interstellar war broke out, how many dragons would die under Kong Hai's command? And these dragons were all counted into Mo Shi's dragon-slaying value. Just thinking about it made him King happy. If a war broke out, wouldn't he be able to evolve into a rank 10 super-evolved colossal dragon in minutes? Perhaps it would be easy for the ancient dragons as well. At the same time, Immortal also thought of a way to increase his strength quickly. He said to Kong Hai, "If there are people in your army who want to improve their strength, tell them to come over. Just like the others before, I guarantee that each of them will be able to advance by one level within 10 days. Although Immortal already had many students now, these students were basically still studying in the academy. None of them could really join the army. Even the 6th grade students were still a few years away from graduation. It would take a few more years for them to quickly develop their combat strength and increase their dragon-slaying value. Therefore, Immortal thought of the colossal dragons in the army. Although there hadn't been any major wars in the Cloud Sea Star in the past 2 years, small rebellions kept happening, and there were also dragon bandits and the like. Therefore, the army had been very busy. If those colossal dragons in the army became his disciples, then he would be able to earn dragon-slaying value every day. Kong Hai nodded. "Teacher Mo, I'll ask my Imperial Guards to come over tomorrow." Immortal shook his head. "There's no need for the Imperial Guards for now. I think those soldiers who are fighting on the front lines every day need to improve their strength as soon as possible. This way, their lives will be more secure." Kong Hai thought to himself, "Not only does a magister have powerful strength, but he also has a compassionate heart. No wonder he has such strength while I'm only the Lord of a Star. Yes, then I'll order the soldiers on the Eastern Front to come back in batches so that you can improve your strength. Now, there are large and small battles breaking out on the Eastern Front almost every day. They need to improve their strength the most." Immortal nodded, then slowly waved his hand. But on the way back, Kong Hai issued an order. "Ask the soldiers on the Eastern Front to come back in batches to accept Teacher Mo's favor and improve their strength." On the Cloud Sea Star, the government wasn't the only power. In addition to the government, there were also some Hulong. These Hulong were originally the masters of the Cloud Sea Star. They were the natives of the Cloud Sea Star. Since the government sent colossal dragons to the Cloud Sea Star tens of thousands of years ago, these Hulong's status on the Cloud Sea Star was not as good as before. They were even treated as slaves. Therefore, many Hulong began to resist. Of course, their resistance was quickly suppressed by the Star Lord. After several major wars, these Hulong had suffered countless casualties. However, they didn't accept their fate. Instead, they escaped into the forest and fought guerrilla warfare with the government. Because the Cloud Sea Star was huge and the government's army was limited, it was impossible to completely destroy them. Therefore, the Star Lord ordered the colossal dragons to build a defense line in the east, south, west, and north. They were called the East, South, West, and North lines. Nowadays, the Hulong on the South, West, and North lines rarely showed up. Only the Hulong on the Eastern Front were still active and would attack the colossal dragons on the Eastern Front from time to time. At the Eastern Front, when the general guarding the Eastern Front saw the message from the Star Lord, he couldn't help but frown. The Eastern Front was so busy and they were short on manpower. Where would they find the time to send people back to improve their strength? Wasn't the so-called improvement of strength just training? They were going to kill Hulong every day. Why would they need training? This new Star Lord was F***King Bulsh**. But there was no other way. Since it was the Star Lord's order, he could only send some people back first. Therefore, he sent more than 1,000 soldiers to Cloud Sea City. The Star Lord had ordered at least 5,000 people in each batch, but he only sent 1,000. It was obvious that he was dissatisfied with the Star Lord. At the same time, he thought that since he was guarding the Eastern Front, no matter how dissatisfied the Star Lord was with him, the Star Lord wouldn't dare to touch him. That was why he was so brazen. About 2 days later, these soldiers arrived at Cloud Sea City. At the same time, the Star Lord Kong Hai invited Immortal over. When these soldiers saw that Kong Hai was so respectful to Immortal, they were a little surprised. Who exactly was this person? Soon, those who were well-informed found out that Immortal was just a teacher in an academy. They couldn't help but feel disdain. Since when did a teacher in an academy dare to show off in front of the Star Lord? Chapter 632. There was a huge martial arts arena in Cloud Sea City. The martial arts practice field was 10 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide. This was the official martial arts arena. Usually, when there were some major celebrations or competitions between dragons, it would be held in this arena. Now, the 1,000 soldiers were lined up neatly on the arena. Of course, since they were not in their dragon forms, the 1,000 of them looked very small when standing on this huge arena. Star Lord Kong Hai lectured these 1,000 people. Do you want to improve your strength? Do you want to become stronger in 10 days? Now is your chance. You must seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The soldiers below were all silent. Kong Hai was slightly displeased. Although Kong Hai was once called the god of war and a hero by them, a series of policies implemented by Kong Hai since he became the Star Lord were disadvantageous to the army. Therefore, they were a little disgusted. In fact, Kong Hai had been in the army for thousands of years and knew that the dragon army had many bad habits. These policies he implemented were just to make the army change these bad habits and win the hearts of the people. However, this made the veterans who had been in the army for thousands or even tens of thousands of years very uncomfortable. Therefore, they were naturally dissatisfied with Kong Hai. Kong Hai was already well aware of this, but he did not care. He still had to reform what was needed. At this moment, a figure quickly flew over from the distant horizon. When he arrived in front of Kong Hai, he slowly landed. Kong Hai cupped his fist to the person and said, "Mentor Mo, you're here." Mo Shi's subordinates were surprised to see their Star Lord being so respectful to a mentor of an academy. At the same time, they were also disdainful. Their disdain was not only for Kong Hai, but also for Mo Shi. What ability did this little mentor have to make Kong Hai so respectful? Kong Hai was too arrogant. He was actually so respectful to a mentor of the academy. Kong Hai stretched out his hand to the soldiers and said to Mo Shi, "Mentor Mo, you may begin." Mo Shi nodded. Then he said to the 1,000 soldiers, "I know what you're thinking. A mere mentor of the academy is being so respectful to the Star Lord. What a scandal! You're very disdainful of me and the Star Lord." As soon as he said that, the soldiers below looked at each other. Could this guy read minds? At the same time, they were secretly shocked. If they had such disdain for the Star Lord, how would the Star Lord deal with them? As expected, Star Lord Kong Hai's face darkened. "I can understand your disdain for me, but you must respect Mentor Mo 100%. If I find out who disrespects Mentor Mo, you know what will happen to you." Hearing this, the soldiers became even more curious. What was Teacher Mo's identity? The Master of Stars would rather be looked down upon than be looked down upon by others. Mo Shi glanced at the 1,000 plus people. "Now, I'll teach you a spell. It's very simple. Follow me and learn for 10 days. After 10 days, I guarantee that you will break through to the First Order." Hearing Mo Shi's words, none of the soldiers believed him. They had been on the battlefield for many years. They only believed in life and death, and did not believe in anything else. They had been cultivating for so many years without being able to level up. Now, this guy was actually boasting that he could help all of them level up in 10 days. If this wasn't bragging, then what was? Mo Shi continued, "What I want to teach you is very simple." As he spoke, he took out 1,000 cards that he had asked his students to make. The cards were none other than the multiplication table. There was no multiplication table in the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone. Mo Shi demonstrated and recited it. 1 equals 1, 1 2 equals 2, 1 3 equals 3, 1 4 equals 4. 9 The dragons were dumbfounded by this scene. Dragons had a long lifespan, and their memories were not bad. It was not difficult for them to memorize so many multiplication tables. What surprised them was, what was this so-called mentor doing? You said you wanted to help us improve our strength, but in the end, you had to memorize this damn thing. Even Star Lord Kong Hai was dumbfounded. What was the mentor doing? He didn't teach me like this when he taught me before. However, Kong Hai quickly calmed himself down. Instructor Mo was a senior expert. His thoughts were not something that Kong Hai could fathom. Actually, Mo Shi's thoughts were very simple. If he taught all these dragons the 9 dragon transformations one by one, it would be a waste of time. He might as well teach them the multiplication table. It would save time and effort. Anyway, the system did not teach the dragons anything. As long as he taught them a random skill for 10 days, they would be recognized by the system as his disciple. Then, Immortal placed the 1,000 multiplication tables on the stone platform in front of them and asked the dragons to come and take them. Although the dragon warriors were unwilling, they still came forward to take them. After all, the Star Lord was standing there. Although they were dissatisfied, they did not dare to disobey. After all the dragons had taken the multiplication tables, Kong Hai said, "Start reading now." The giant dragons looked at each other. Although they felt embarrassed, they still began to read it one after another. Thus, a scene like this appeared in the square. 1,000 dragon warriors stood in a square formation and chanted the multiplication formula in unison. 1 equals 1, 1 2 equals 2, 1 3 equals 3, 9 9 81. After all the dragons finished reading, Immortal nodded. Very good. Now, you can go back and recite the multiplication table by yourselves. I'll give you 10 days. After 10 days, those who have recited it can come here to find me. I'll help each of you improve by 1 level. Of course, this is voluntary. If you don't want to recite it or improve your strength, you don't have to come. But I have to remind you that you only have 1 chance. If you miss this chance, I won't help any of you improve your strength. The dragons scratched their heads in confusion. Seeing that they were still not dispersing, Kong Hai shouted, "Disperse." After all, he was once a soldier. Ordinary people could not understand his aura. The soldiers dispersed and left one after another under his roar. Kong Hai waited for those baffled soldiers to leave before he turned to Immortal and asked expectantly, "Instructor Imo, what did you ask them to recite just now? Can you teach me?" He looked as eager as Sun Wukong in the cave of the slanting moon and 3 stars, asking Patriarch Subhuti for the method of immortality. Immortal smiled faintly and shook his head. Everyone has their own cultivation method. You can't learn theirs. Kong Hai was a little anxious. No, instructor. There are so many of them. If they can learn mine, why can't they? Immortal smiled but did not answer. He left. Kong Hai was left standing there in a daze. He looked in the direction where the soldiers had dispersed, and his heart was filled with envy for those soldiers. That multiplication table must be a very powerful cultivation method or skill. Why can't Instructor Imo teach me? Chapter 633. That night, after the soldiers returned home, some went to the restaurant to drink, some went to visit relatives and friends they had not seen in a long time. Some went to the brothels to admire the flowers. They had been on the Eastern Front for so long, fighting to the death every day, and rarely had time to enjoy themselves. This time, they had finally arrived at Cloud Sea City, so they had to have fun. Obviously, most of the soldiers did not take Immortal's words seriously. Only a very small number of soldiers really memorized the multiplication formula. In a military tent, a soldier with a dull face was reciting the multiplication formula. 4 7 28, 5 7 35, 6 7 6 7 40. A soldier outside who had just returned from the brothels could not help but laugh when he saw this. "Shuangfeng, it's fine that you're usually so dumb, but today, you're actually memorizing this troublesome multiplication formula. I really don't know how someone as dull as you survived on the Eastern Front until now. I, Li Aoshan, really admire you." Shuangfeng smiled bitterly and said, "I'm usually not good at anything, and I'm always looked down on. This time, I finally have a chance to improve my strength, so of course I have to seize it." "Ha, you really believe in dullards." Li Aoshan laughed as he shook his head and went to sleep in his tent. Shuangfeng watched Li Aoshan enter the tent and stared at him for a moment. Then he lowered his head, opened the multiplication formula table, and continued to recite. 4 7 28, 5 7 35, 6 7 6 7 40. There were less than 50 people who really memorized the multiplication formula like Shuangfeng. 10 days was not a long time, but it was not short either. In these 10 days, Shuangfeng and the other 40 people had already memorized the multiplication formula. They could even recite it backwards. They were all giant dragons who were usually weak in the army and were not valued. The other dragons did not take the multiplication formula seriously at all. They just ate, drank, and played every day. When Kong Hai saw this, he cursed in his heart. The multiplication formula was such a profound technique, and the teacher could teach it to these guys, but they did not cherish it. He wanted to force these soldiers to learn it, but since the teacher said that it was up to them whether they learned it or not, he could not go against the teacher's wishes. At noon on the 10th day, on the huge training field, the more than 40 soldiers who had memorized the multiplication formula couldn't wait any longer. They lined up neatly and waited for Teacher Mo. As for the other warriors, they were still indulging in debauchery. Anyway, that Teacher Mo had said that it was up to them whether they wanted to learn or not. It didn't matter if they didn't want to learn. At noon, Immortal finally appeared. Kong Hai followed closely behind Immortal. When Kong Hai saw that there were less than 50 people, he was instantly enraged. These little bastards are really rebelling against them. I'll go and get them all. After all, Kong Hai had been in the army for thousands of years. In his anger, all the vulgar words came out. Immortal waved his hand and said faintly, "There's no need for that. This matter was originally voluntary. They were not forced to do it." Kong Hai could only nod. Yes, Instructor Mo. All the soldiers were looking at Immortal on the stage expectantly. Immortal jumped off the stage and came in front of one of the soldiers. "What's your name?" Shuangfeng. Li Shuangfeng. The soldier was so nervous that he stuttered a little. Immortal said with an amiable smile, "Shuangfeng, let me see how you do it." Shuangfeng immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate the energy in his body. A moment later, he completed 81 circulations. Immortal nodded. Overall, it's not bad. However, when the energy passes through the Tianwei point, you must rush through it slowly. Otherwise, the impact of the energy on the Tianwei point will be too great. The effect of the cultivation will be greatly reduced. Try to cultivate again. Remember, you must slow down when you pass through the Tianwei point. The soldier was very confused. In the past, when his father taught him how to cultivate, he said that when passing through the Tianwei point, he must rush through it quickly to stimulate the cells and meridians in his body. Why was this teacher completely different from what his father said? However, when he saw how respectful the Star Master was to this teacher, he didn't dare to have any more doubts. In any case, he didn't get much out of his normal cultivation. He was only a rank 2 evolved dragon. Moreover, it seemed that he had no hope of breaking through to rank 2 in this lifetime. He might as well try this method. Thinking of this, he began to cultivate according to Immortal's instructions. When the energy passed through the Tianwei point, he didn't rush through it violently like before. Instead, he slowed it down. Just this time, he suddenly felt a sense of comfort in his limbs and bones that he hadn't felt before. After 2 circulations, he had an answer to his doubts. Sure enough, this teacher was right. After 81 circulations, he suddenly felt a surge of energy rushing through his body. All the meridians in his body had an indescribable sense of comfort. It was also at this time that the energy in his body suddenly spread in all directions. Fortunately, after thousands of years of cultivation, he was very experienced in controlling energy. He didn't let the energy spread out of his body. Then a second time, a third time. The energy spread out 3 times in a row. Even the surrounding soldiers widened their eyes in shock. Although Shuangfeng's energy didn't spread out of his body, they could feel the impact of the energy. In the past, this kind of energy impact would only happen when breaking through. Shuangfeng had broken through, and he had broken through 3 ranks in a row. Sure enough, Shuangfeng opened his eyes, and his eyes shone brightly. He looked at himself in disbelief, from his feet to his hands, and then from his hands to his feet. His tone was extremely excited. "Teacher Imo, I broke through 3 ranks in a row." Hiss, hiss, hiss. The sound of the soldiers drawing in a breath of cold air could be heard one after another. Shuangfeng hadn't been able to advance a single grade in the past 1,000 years. Now, he had advanced 3 grades in just a short 5 minutes of cultivation. This was too exaggerated. Amidst the shock, these soldiers were filled with anticipation. Fortunately, they didn't indulge in debauchery like the other soldiers. Fortunately, they seized this opportunity. Immortal nodded at Shuangfeng, then looked at another soldier. Next. Soon, a few hours later, all of the 40-odd warriors had leveled up. The least advanced by 2 grades, and the most advanced by 4 grades. Kong Hai, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. Advancing to 4th grade in a single cultivation session. This was even more terrifying than the students of the academy. However, after some thought, he understood the reason behind this. These soldiers had been cultivating for a much longer time than the students of the academy. Most of them had been cultivating for at least 1,000 years. The energy accumulated in their bodies, as well as the tempering of their cells and meridians, was naturally not something that the students could compare to. With Teacher Mo's guidance, their breakthroughs had come naturally. Advancing to 4th grade was unexpected, but it was also within reason. Chapter 634. Under Immortal's guidance, the 40-plus dragon warriors quickly broke through. Moreover, Immortal's guidance this time used the time skill. Apart from the first double Feng, the rest of the dragon warriors basically compressed their time. What was supposed to be 5 minutes was actually just a few seconds. After breaking through, the dragon warriors cupped their fists towards Immortal and knelt on one knee. We will never forget Teacher Mo's great kindness. We will never forget Teacher Mo's great kindness. The dragon warriors said gratefully. Some of them had broken through 2 ranks, while others had broken through 4 ranks. If not for Immortal, they probably wouldn't even be able to break through 1 rank. In this lifetime, he would die at his current level. Moreover, the significance of Immortal helping them break through was not only an increase in their strength, but also an extension of their lifespan. They were all evolved dragons. Every time they advanced a rank, their lifespan would be extended by 1,000 years. In other words, Immortal only used a few seconds to extend each of their lifespan by at least 2,000 years. Such a great kindness naturally made them excited and moved. One of the evolved dragons said, "Teacher Mo, if you have any use for us in the future, please don't hesitate to ask." The rest of the dragons nodded. Immortal waved his hand and said, "Brothers, you have been fighting day and night on the Eastern Front, using your lives to protect our safety. It's my honor to be able to do something for you. How could I dare to ask for anything in return?" This made the dragon warriors have a deeper understanding of Immortal. At the same time, they admired Immortal even more in their hearts. They originally thought that this teacher who could help them break through 2 ranks in a short time was a senior expert who would be high and mighty. They didn't expect this senior expert to treat them like this. It must be known that in today's society, although they were fighting on the front lines every day, not many dragons respected them. Because with the development of society, the dragons had become more materialistic and more materialistic. The dragons no longer worshipped heroes, but those rich bosses. And now, this archmage was treating them with such respect. How could they not be moved? Immortal waved his hand and said, "It's already late. It's getting late. Everyone go back and rest. If you want, you can stay here for another 3 to 5 days before returning to the Eastern Front." The soldiers cupped their fists towards Immortal. "Thank you, Teacher Immortal." That night, Shuangfeng was cultivating in his tent. Li Aoshan returned from outside. He opened Shuangfeng's tent and glanced inside. Seeing that Shuangfeng was still cultivating, he couldn't help but shake his head. "I say, Shuangfeng, don't you find it boring? Look at this colorful world. It's so much better than our boring Eastern Front." "It's not easy to come here. Don't you know how to go out and have some fun?" However, just as he said this, he suddenly froze. This was because he could sense from Shuangfeng's cultivation that there was something wrong with Shuangfeng's aura. It seemed to be many times stronger than before. He carefully sensed it again and asked in surprise, "Shuangfeng, you've broken through?" After both of them had completed 81 cycles of cultivation, they slowly opened their eyes. I've broken through." Li Aoshan was stunned again. "But that's not right. You were only a rank 2 super-evolved dragon before. Even if you broke through, you'd only be rank 3. I'm rank 4. Why does your aura seem to be stronger than mine now? Shuang Feng shook his head and replied in embarrassment, No, I'm rank 5 now. What? Li Aoshan shook his head repeatedly. He couldn't believe it, or rather, he didn't want to believe it. When he went out this morning, this guy was only a rank 2 super-evolved dragon. When he came back at night, he was rank 5. In less than 12 hours, he broke through to rank 3? However, judging from Shuang Feng's aura, he was indeed more than 10 times stronger than himself, a rank 4. Thinking about how this idiot Shuang Feng usually didn't know how to deceive people, he must be telling the truth. However, this guy broke through 3 levels consecutively. What's there to be ashamed of? This made Li Aoshan even more shocked. *CK, Shuang Feng, even a blockhead like you can be enlightened one day. Tell me, how did you break through? Shuang Feng smiled and shook his head. If I were to cultivate by myself, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to break through even if I died. It was Teacher Mo who helped me. Magus? Which Magus? Li Aoshan was a little confused. Previously, he didn't pay much attention to Mo. He had only met him once 10 days ago. At that time, he only knew that he was a teacher and didn't pay attention to his surname. In the past 10 days, he had been indulging in wine and women. He had long forgotten about this so-called teacher. It's the Teacher Mo who taught us the multiplication table. Shuang Feng, are you sure you're not joking? Li Aoshan still felt that Shuang Feng was joking. That bastard teacher? Shui Shuang Feng, you're playing with me. Li Aoshan knew that Shuang Feng never lied. However, he couldn't believe it. He didn't want to believe it. What he didn't want to believe wasn't that Shuang Feng had broken through 3 levels under that teacher's guidance. It was that he didn't want to believe that he had missed a great opportunity. Shuang Feng naturally didn't know what he was thinking. Instead, he said seriously, No, it was Instructor Mo who guided me. He first let me practice it once, then guided me to practice it once. Then I broke through. Moreover, I only broke through 3 ranks. At this point, Shuang Feng lowered his head in shame. Brother Jin broke through to the 4th level. Shuang Feng felt a little dizzy when he heard this. He kept shaking his head. No, I don't believe it. How can someone break through to the 4th level consecutively? This is definitely fake. That teacher is just playing a trick on you. At this moment, another warrior walked in. Shuang Feng, has your cultivation stabilized? I broke through to the 3rd level and just stabilized my cultivation. Speaking of which, that brother Jin is really a ruthless person. He broke through to the 4th level consecutively and stabilized his cultivation long ago. It seems that our talent is still lacking compared to his. When Li Aoshan heard this, he felt his vision go dark. At the same time, there were nearly 1,000 other people who felt the same way. The entire camp was practically boiling. After hearing about the experiences of these 40 warriors, they were all filled with regret. Teacher Mo is a truly capable dragon. We were simply too stupid. We missed a great opportunity. Fortunately, we are still in Cloud Sea City. Early tomorrow morning, we will go beg Teacher Mo and apologize to him. These dragons naively thought that Mo sure would give them a chance. This was because they heard from the 40 warriors that Teacher Mo was a very nice person. Not only did he help them break through, but he also didn't take a single cent. In particular, he was very respectful to the dragon warriors. Therefore, at 6 o'clock the next morning, these 1,000 people had already gathered together and headed to Mo Shi's residence. Lakeside Villa. Chapter 635. The next day was a Sunday. Early in the morning, Mo Shi had yet to wake up. The 1,000 dragon warriors had already gathered at the plaza outside Mo Shi's lakeside villa. However, in order not to offend Mo Shi, they did not approach Mo Shi's villa. Instead, they sent a clever dragon warrior to ask around in front of Mo Shi's villa. The dragon warrior was called Shui Wugen. When he arrived at the villa's entrance, he saw a young man practicing his skills by the lakeside. He could not help but feel happy as he approached the young man. May I ask if you know Teacher Mo? The young man was naturally Lei Ren. He sized the guy up and down. He did not look like a student who was here to learn. He asked with some doubt, "Why are you looking for Teacher Mo?" Shui Wugen was also a smart person. He could tell at a glance that Lei Ren and Teacher Mo's relationship was not shallow. Thus, he greeted him with a warm smile. "Hello, we are dragon warriors from the Eastern Front. We are here to cultivate under Teacher Mo's orders." Lei Ren had heard a little about them. His face immediately turned cold and he shook his head. "What do you take Teacher Mo for? Do you know how many people on Cloud Sea Planet are begging Teacher Mo to take them as his disciples? How many people have brought gifts to ask Teacher Mo to be their master? Now, Teacher Mo is kind enough to teach you for free without taking a single cent. In the end, you don't even appreciate it. Don't worry, Teacher Mo will not give you a second chance." When Shui Wugen heard this, his heart sank. However, he did not give up. That was a chance to advance to rank 2 or even rank 4. He could live for 2,000 or even 4,000 years. How could he give up just like that? He still greeted Lei Ren with a smile. "Previously we were blind. We are not good people. Now we know we were wrong." Lei Ren sneered. "Some mistakes can only be made once in a lifetime. There is no second chance." Shui Wugen still had a humble smile on his face. "Brother, please make an exception and inform Teacher Mo. Even if he refuses, we want to hear it from Teacher Mo himself." Lei Ren snorted. "Teacher Mo is busy every day. He works until midnight. He still hasn't woken up." In truth, Mo sure had indeed only gone to bed in the middle of the night, but he had been busy with Happy for half the night. Of course, with his current strength, even if he was tossed and turned in the middle of the night, he would still be energetic if he wanted to wake up early. However, what was the point of waking up early? He could not think of a reason to wake up early. Shui Wugen cupped his fists towards Lei Ren. "Many thanks, brother. In that case, we will wait for Teacher Mo to wake up." Therefore, Shui Wugen retreated and returned to the plaza. The soldiers in the square couldn't wait any longer. "How is it? Have you seen Mentor Mo? Did Instructor Mo agree? I heard that this Teacher Mo is a very good person. He won't disagree, right?" Shui Wugen frowned and shook his head slightly. Teacher Mo hasn't woken up yet. However, that person should be his disciple. From his attitude, it seems that Teacher Mo isn't too happy. The other giant dragons looked at each other, and one of them said in relief, "As the saying goes, it's easy to get rid of the king of hell, but it's hard to deal with the little demons. Some fellows just rely on their master's power to show off. Let's see Mentor Mo first. Then we'll wait here for Teacher Mo to wake up." If the soldiers at the front lines saw the current performance of these people, they would be shocked. One must know that many of these soldiers had very fiery tempers. They would often attack at the slightest disagreement. Now that they had suffered such humiliation in front of Teacher Mo, not only did they not have the slightest intention of retaliating, they even looked very humble. When it was around noon, Mo sure finally woke up. After eating the breakfast that Lei Ren sent over, Mo sure poured himself a cup of tea and went to the lakeside. He enjoyed the beautiful scenery of the lakeside while drinking his tea. "Brother Mo, have you seen those giant dragon warriors? They came early in the morning, intending to apologize to you." Although Lei Ren didn't like the attitude of these giant dragon warriors towards Mo sure, whether or not to teach them still depended on Mo sure's opinion. He couldn't make the decision for Mo sure. Mo sure didn't even look at those giant dragon warriors. He drank a mouthful of tea and said, "Today's tea is not bad." His meaning was very clear. There was no need to bother about them. Lei Ren immediately nodded. "Brother Mo, do you have any plans for today?" Mo sure laughed. "Even if there is, it is my plan. As for you, you should cultivate well, young man." Although Lei Ren couldn't go with Mo sure, he still nodded. "Big brother Mo, I'll listen to you." Then, he entered the courtyard and returned to his room to cultivate. This was completely different from his previous image as a hedonistic son. In the past, Lei Ren couldn't sit still after cultivating for 3 to 5 minutes. But ever since he met Mo sure, he would cultivate for at least 5 hours a day. He would even cultivate for 2 to 3 days at a time. From afar, Shui Wugan saw Emosher come out. At the same time, he saw the person talking to Emosher. He knew that Lei Ren had already told Emosher about their situation, and Emosher didn't even glance in their direction. This was enough to show Emosher's attitude. Thinking of this, Shui Wugan's heart sank. But even so, he couldn't give up. He still called over 10 smarter warriors to come to the lakeside villa with him. They came to Emosher and knelt down on one knee in front of Emosher. Mentor Emo, we were blind. Please forgive us. Mentor Emo, we offended you previously. If you want to punish us, we will accept it. Mentor Emo, we were wrong. We were so wrong. Now, we know that we were wrong. Mentor Mo, I memorized the multiplication table last night. Please enlighten me. However, Emosher didn't pay any attention to them from beginning to end. What a joke. A few days ago, I took the initiative to teach you, but you treated my things like dog shit. Now, seeing that the 40+ giant dragons had improved, they pounced on me again. Emosher hated such snobbish people the most. No matter what they said at the side, Emosher paid no attention to them. After he finished tasting the tea, he directly soared into the sky and flew towards the distance, quickly disappearing into the horizon. The dragon warriors looked at each other when they saw this. However, they didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. After all, they were in the wrong first. Moreover, Mentor Mo could really help a giant dragon advance to 4th grade in just a few minutes. This was enough to show Mentor Mo's strength. Moreover, even the Star Lord respected Mentor Mo. It was obvious how powerful and influential Mentor Mo was. That was why they didn't dare to complain in front of Emosher. What do we do now? One of the dragon warriors asked. We wait until we die. Yes, we won't leave until Mentor Mo agrees. Chapter 636. Emosher strolled around for an entire day. With his current ability, he could already reach 1% of the speed of light. He couldn't go anywhere. Within a day, he could travel through the entire Cloud Sea planet and hundreds of nearby planets. Actually, he didn't do anything serious for the day. He looked at the sea of clouds, enjoyed the volcanic eruptions, and witnessed a tsunami in the middle of the sea. Then he had a big meal on a floating island in the sea. Seeing that it was getting late, he returned to the lakeside villa. When he returned to the entrance of the lakeside villa, the nearly 1,000 dragon warriors were still in the square not far from the lakeside villa. It was obvious that they had been here the entire day without eating or drinking. When they saw Emosher coming from afar, they all stood up straight. When Emosher landed in front of the lakeside villa, Shui Wugan and the 9 clever dragon warriors all rushed over. Instructor Emo, Instructor Emo, Instructor Emo, we know we were wrong. Instructor Emo, please give us one last chance. However, Emosher just snorted coldly. I only give you one chance. After that, he ignored them and went straight into the lakeside villa. Shui Wugan and the dragon warriors looked at each other. What should we do? How about we wait until death? If my instructor doesn't agree, we won't leave. A dragon warrior suggested. The other dragon warriors all nodded. Then they returned to the square and continued to stand up straight. One had to admit that they were indeed very persistent. They stood there for the entire night. At noon the next day, when Emosher woke up, they were still standing in the square. However, Emosher still ignored them. They stood in the square for the entire day. This night, they still stood straight for the entire night. Due to the long lifespan of dragon warriors, there were many legends about perseverance in dragon culture. As long as you persevered, it seemed that there was nothing you couldn't do. If one day wasn't enough, then 10 days. If 10 days weren't enough, then a year. If 1 year wasn't enough, then 100 years or 1,000 years. There would always be a time when you could do it. The next morning, they were prepared to continue standing there and waiting for Emosher. They believed that their perseverance would eventually move him. However, this morning, Star-Lord Kong Hai ordered the 1,000 soldiers to return to the Eastern Front as soon as possible and replace them with the next batch of soldiers. As a result, these soldiers were completely out of luck with this opportunity. They were all extremely dejected. The next afternoon, when they returned to the Eastern Front, the general of the Eastern Front summoned them for questioning. Why exactly did the Star Lord send them to Ocean of Cloud City? When he asked this question, the Eastern Front's general was surprised to discover that over 40 dragon warriors had grown stronger. At the very least, they had reached Tier 2, with some even reaching Tier 4. As for the rest of the soldiers, their strength did not increase. After asking the general of the Eastern Front, they understood what had happened. He immediately scolded the soldiers who failed to seize this opportunity. He could have used this opportunity to increase his strength. In the end, these guys missed such an opportunity. Not only did they fail to improve their own strength, but the strength of the Eastern Front also failed to improve because of them. What a bunch of idiots! Then, the general of the Eastern Front ordered that the soldiers be locked up for half a month, and deduct half a year's worth of dragon coins from them. This was a warning to the rest of the warriors. The next morning, he sent out the second batch of soldiers. The general of the Eastern Front did not discount this second batch of soldiers. Instead, he sent out 5,000 soldiers. Moreover, these 5,000 soldiers were all elites that he had handpicked. Most of them were Tier 5 evolved dragons. These soldiers were all very excited. When they left, the general of the Eastern Front gathered them together and gave them a lecture. All 5,000 of you, listen up. Every one of you must advance by at least 1 grade when you return. If you can't, you will be executed in public. His words were very strict. The soldiers were all shocked. However, since Instructor Mo had the ability to improve the strength of the other dragons, they would naturally advance by 1 grade as long as they did as Instructor Mo said. In just 1 short month, Mo sure had helped 15,000 soldiers advance by at least 1 grade. Moreover, the ones with the lowest potential had advanced by 1 grade. Most of them had advanced by 2 or even 3 grades. The one with the highest potential had advanced by 5 grades. He had gone from a Tier 5 evolved dragon to a Tier 10 evolved dragon. This was a terrifying improvement. On this day, a scout from the front lines came to report. Venerable, bad news. The border city has fallen. The border city was a small city at the very front of the Eastern Front. As a matter of fact, this small city had no strategic significance. However, as the soldiers of the Eastern Front, they kept in mind the ancient motto, "Territory is sacred and inviolable." Those Hulong had occupied the border city. Naturally, they had to take it back. The general of the Eastern Front raised his eyebrows slightly. How many Hulong have come? About 100,000 of them. The general of the Eastern Front said without any hesitation, "Let those 15,000 soldiers deal with the 100,000 Hulong." The counselor next to him was a little worried. "General, there are 100,000 Hulong. I don't think it's appropriate for us to only send 15,000 soldiers." Generally speaking, the strength of the dragon warriors was stronger than Hulong, but not by this much. 10,000 warriors could resist 15,000 Hulong at most. Now, they were only sending 15,000 to deal with 100,000 Hulong. No wonder he was worried. However, the general of the Eastern Front shook his head. "This is the only way to show the might of our Eastern Front army. Also, they only sent 100,000 people and dared to occupy our border city. Obviously, they have other plans. If too many of us leave here and the city is empty, can you guarantee that they won't take advantage of the situation and invade?" The counselor nodded. "General, you have foresight. I admire you." In the afternoon of the same day, the 15,000 soldiers left for the border city. At the same time, the 100,000 Hulong around and in the center of the border city were singing and dancing to their heart's content. A spy came to report, "Boss, it's bad. The Eastern Front army is here." The leader of the Hulong was a bearded man. Hearing the spy's report, he put down the wine cup in his hand and asked, "How many of them are here?" The spy replied, "Estimated to be around 15,000. The boss was a little stunned, and then he burst out laughing. "They look down on us too much. They want to fight against 100,000 Hulong with only 15,000 soldiers? That's too childish. In this case, let's let them have a taste of our Hulong's power." Someone next to him said, "Boss, Do they have any plans? The bearded man waved his hand. Even if they do, so what? Our mission this time is to lure them here. Our other brothers can take advantage of the situation and directly attack their general's mansion. This time, we'll make them suffer a great loss, and even kill their general directly. Hearing this, the crowd raised their weapons and roared angrily. Kill the general and spread the glory of our long way. Kill the general and spread the glory of our long way. Kill the general and spread the glory of our long way. Chapter 637. When the 15,000 soldiers of the Eastern Front Army were 5 kilometers away from the border city, the 100,000 Hurons were already in position. In the past, whenever the Hurons encountered the Eastern Front Army, they would always split up and engage in guerrilla warfare. This time, however, they were preparing to fight the Eastern Front Army. This was very unusual. The captain of the 15,000 soldiers of the Eastern Front Army shouted at the Hurons from afar, "The Eastern Front Army is here. Why don't you surrender now? If you don't surrender, it will be too late for regrets." The bearded leader of the Hurons laughed. "So what if the Eastern Front Army is here? What's there to be afraid of? 15,000 soldiers coming to attack our 100,000 giant dragons. Aren't they just sending themselves to their deaths?" The captain of the Eastern Front Army sneered, "Since you don't want to listen, then die." Then he waved his flag and the 15,000 soldiers of the Eastern Front Army charged forward. When they charged over, they all transformed into their giant dragon forms. Each of the 15,000 giant dragons was 1,000 meters long. The sky was instantly filled with them. It was a spectacular scene. The 100,000 giant dragons thought that the Eastern Front Army had sent only 15,000 giant dragons over for some reason. There might even be an ambush in the dark, so they were already prepared. However, after some investigation, they found no ambush within a radius of tens of kilometers. This surprised the Hurons. Did the Eastern Front Army think that their 15,000 giant dragons could fight the 100,000 giant dragons? Apart from being surprised, the bearded man's eyes were filled with viciousness. Since they wanted to give their heads to him, it would be impolite to refuse. He then raised his right hand, intending to order the Hurons to attack. However, at this moment he paused for a moment. Strange. He felt that the strength of the Eastern Front Army seemed to have increased. The aura of the captain of the Eastern Front Army was no longer that of a 5th-grade evolved giant dragon. He sensed it carefully and found that he couldn't tell what grade the captain's aura was. This meant that the captain was far more powerful than him. He was a 5th-grade evolved giant dragon. That meant that the captain was most likely a 7th-grade or even 8th-grade evolved giant dragon. Thinking of this, he kept an eye out. He ordered the Hurons around him, set up the formation and act according to the situation. If you see something wrong, retreat immediately. The surrounding dragons felt a little strange. Why did Boss suddenly become a coward? Why would 100,000 Hulong cower in the face of 15,000 soldiers of the Eastern Front? This didn't seem like Boss's personality. At this moment, those from the Eastern Army had arrived. They were fearless in the face of 100,000 dragons. Their fangs and claws slashed at these Hulong. As soon as they attacked, the dragons felt that something was wrong. They had been fighting guerrilla warfare for hundreds of years, so they were very familiar with the Eastern Front Army. However, the strength displayed by these 15,000 Eastern Front Army was far greater than before. That was not all. The aura of the captain of the Eastern Front Army instantly spread out and enveloped them, causing the energy in their bodies to circulate very slowly. It was obvious that the strength of this Eastern Line captain had increased a lot in a short period of time. Previously, he was only a rank 5 evolved giant dragon, but now his strength had most likely reached the rank 7 or even the rank 8. This made the dragons a little flustered. Just as they were panicking, the Eastern Front Army had already arrived, and the captain of the Eastern Front Army flew towards Hulong's boss. Seeing this, Hulong's boss hurriedly tried to escape. However, it was too late. The captain of the Eastern Front Army transformed into a giant dragon and lunged at Hulong's boss. Hu Long's boss also transformed into a giant dragon, but he only had one goal: escape. That was because he could sense that this captain of the Eastern Front Army was not someone he could handle. However, it was too late. The captain of the Eastern Front Army stabbed his front claws into Hu Long's back. He exerted some force and tore Hu Long's body into two halves. Instant kill. As a result, the entire Hu Dragon army was thrown into chaos. All the Hu Dragons were in disbelief. Their boss had been dealing with the Eastern Front Army for many years. Both sides knew each other very well. They were both rank 5 evolved giant dragons. How could this captain of the Eastern Front Army kill their boss in an instant? Since their boss was already dead, they only had one choice: escape. The Hu Dragons had been fighting guerrilla warfare all this time and lacked the ability to fight large-scale battles. If they had fought together in such a situation, they might have had a chance of winning. However, they scattered and fled, and could only be hunted down by the Eastern Front Army. In this final battle, the Eastern Front Army had killed over 2,000 of the Hu Dragons out of 15,000 of them. It was a pity that these Hulong were very cunning. Many of them had space attribute escape methods, so most of them were taken away by the Hulong. However, killing 2,000 of them was already the greatest victory they had achieved over the years. Over the years, the Hu Dragons had split up and attacked everywhere. Even in the battles where the Eastern Front Army won, they had only killed 100 Hu Dragons at most. A battle where 2,000 Hu Dragons were killed had never happened before. Moreover, it was very difficult to obtain escape methods with spatial attributes, especially for these Hulong. They did not dare to trade openly in the market. Therefore, it was even more difficult for them to get their hands on such things. Now that they had used up their spatial escape techniques, they would not be able to escape the next time they ran into them. Therefore, these Hu Dragons would stop for a while, and the Eastern Front Army would be able to enjoy some peace. The general of the Eastern Front Army saw the results of this battle from the central control room. He was very satisfied. Only 15,000 of the Eastern Front Army had defeated 100,000 Hu Dragons. This was indeed a great reputation for the Eastern Front Army. It made those Hu Dragons fearful, and at the same time, it foiled their conspiracy. That Mentor Mo was indeed powerful. It seemed that if he had the chance to return to Cloud Sea City in the future, he would have to pay a visit to Mentor Mo in person and express his gratitude. At the same time, in the lakeside villa, Emosher, who was tasting tea, suddenly heard a series of notifications in his mind. Dragon slaying value +1. Dragon slaying value +1. Dragon slaying value +1. When the notifications ended, Emosher looked at his dragon slaying value again. Dragon slaying value 203110000. You can level up. Do you want to level up now? Emosher was secretly delighted. This was really a case of leveling up while he was sitting at home. He had leveled up while he was tasting tea here. Well, this could work. Level up. Emosher said in his mind. Soon, a notification came in Emosher's mind. Level up successful. At this time, he looked at his attributes again. Name, Emosher, level, Tier 1 Magician, Tier 8 Super Evolved Dragon, Ability. Click to expand. Phew, Emosher let out a long breath. Becoming a Tier 8 Super Evolved Dragon meant that he was one step closer to becoming an Ancient Dragon. As long as he became an Ancient Dragon, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. He had been keeping a low profile since coming to the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone. He had been holding it in for a long time. Chapter 638. Since the Eastern Front Army had killed over 2,000 Hu Dragons, the Hu Dragons were much more restrained in the following days, and the Eastern Front was much more peaceful. Of course, the peace on the Eastern Front was not a good thing for Emosher. The more peaceful the Eastern Front was, the less dragon killing points he had. But even so, the Eastern Front Army still sent 5,000 dragons to Cloud Sea City to learn from Emosher every 10 days. Emosher still taught them the multiplication table before helping them break through. Gradually, the number of Emosher's students increased by the system. After more than 2 months, his students had already reached more than 30,000 people. At this time, Mo sure hoped that a war would break out somewhere so that he could instantly level up. However, the entire Cloud Sea planet had been relatively peaceful recently, and there was no war at all. The Cloud Sea planet and the other planets also lived in harmony, and there were no wars. This made Mo sure speechless. He could only walk around aimlessly every day. He looked very relaxed, but no one knew the helplessness in his heart. On this day, Mo sure was teaching students at the academy. A spaceship slowly descended above the Cloud Sea Academy. When the instructors of Ocean of Clouds Academy saw the symbol on the flying ship clearly, all of their expressions changed slightly. There was a dark green skull symbol on the spaceship. It looked a little strange and a little terrifying. This is a spaceship from the Myriad Poison Planet. The Myriad Poison Planet was notorious in the nearby star fields. There was poison everywhere on the Myriad Poison Planet. Plants were poisonous, animals were poisonous, microbes were poisonous, and even the air was poisonous. It was very difficult for ordinary dragons to survive on the Myriad Poison Planet, but for poison-type dragons, it was a treasure trove. Their cultivation there was twice the result with half the effort. So many poison-type dragons would eventually go to the Myriad Poison Planet. If such a planet developed, its strength would far surpass other planets. But poison-type dragons were very rare. Out of 100 dragons, only one poison-type dragon would appear. So the number of poison-type dragons was a big problem. So it was very difficult for them to develop. But even so, no one dared to casually provoke the Myriad Poison Planet. The master of the Myriad Poison Planet was a rank 7 super evolved dragon. It was very difficult to find a rank 7 super evolved dragon in the nearby star fields. Moreover, it was a rank 7 super evolved giant dragon with the poison attribute. This made it even harder to deal with. If they provoked him, one of his big moves would probably cause millions of corpses to fall. Therefore, the planets in the nearby star fields had formed a consensus that it was best not to provoke the giant dragons of the Myriad Poison Star for no reason. Only 2 people came down from the aircraft. Both of them had dyed their hair dark green and wore dark green eyeshadow. It gave people a very strange feeling. One of them said, "Big brother, is this Cloud Sea planet? You didn't go the wrong way, did you? Are you kidding? How can I get lost? I heard that planet Cloud Sea is a very beautiful planet, but why does this place make me feel so king uncomfortable?" Nonsense. The air you breathed on the Myriad Poison Planet was beneficial to your body. Here, there's no poison in the air at all. It's only natural that you feel uncomfortable. That's true. What kind of lousy planet is this? It's really annoying. Let's hurry up and leave with that person. As the 2 of them spoke, they completely ignored the teachers and students around them. After they finished speaking, they waved at a student. The student didn't dare to step forward. Instead, it was a teacher who blocked the student's path. "May I ask why the 2 of you have come to our Cloud Sea planet?" One of them said, "Just one thing. Where's that teacher Mo? We want to take him away." His words were very domineering. It gave people the feeling that no one would dare to stop them. Although the teacher was displeased, he didn't dare to show it on his face. These fellows weren't like ordinary bad guys. They didn't show their emotions on their faces, and they acted without any rules. They did everything according to their whims. If they weren't careful, they could easily poison a large number of people. The teacher said, "I still need to report this matter to the dean. Please follow me." "What dean? We want to find that teacher Mo right now. Take me to him immediately." The 2 of them were rank 3 super evolved giant dragons. They naturally didn't care about the dean of the Cloud Sea Academy. Moreover, their purpose in coming to Cloud Sea Planet was to take Mo sure away. They couldn't be bothered to deal with the dean. When the teacher heard this, he thought to himself, should he take them to see Mo sure? If he took them to see him, who knew where they would take teacher Mo and what they would do? If he didn't take them to see him, they might kill all the students in the academy in a fit of anger. Fortunately, at this moment, the dean appeared in time. The dean had naturally received the report that a flying ship from Myriad Poison Planet had appeared in the academy. He quickly rushed over and glanced at the 2 giant dragons from Myriad Poison Planet. He cupped his fists and said, "Why have the two of you come to our Cloud Sea Academy?" The two men sized up the dean from head to toe. "For you, I'm the dean of the Cloud Sea Academy. You can tell me anything," the dean said with a smile on his face. However, the two of them waved their hands as if they were chasing a dog. Go away, go away. We're looking for Teacher Mo. Everyone else, get out of my way." The dean's face darkened. After being the dean for so many years, this was the first time someone spoke to him like this. However, he couldn't lose his temper in the face of these two fellows who were covered in poison. Helpless, the dean could only say to the teacher, "Take them to Teacher Mo." At the same time, he used his mind to send a voice transmission to Emoshur. "Two giant dragons from Myriad Poison Planet are looking for you. Do you want to avoid them in advance?" Emoshur replied indifferently, "Avoid what? Why should I avoid them? Let them come." The dean heard that Emoshur didn't panic at all. Instead, he seemed to have a card up his sleeve. Only then did he feel relieved. Soon, the two of them were brought to Emoshur by the teacher. At this moment, Emoshur was watering the flowers at the door of his office. He was living a very leisurely life now. He was either tasting tea or watering flowers. In the eyes of the other giant dragons, he was as leisurely as a god. The two green-furred myriad poison star dragons looked Emoshur up and down. One of them asked, "Your Teacher Mo?" Emoshur didn't look at them and continued watering the flowers. At the same time, he replied indifferently, "That's right." The other myriad poison planet giant dragon shook his head. "He looks very ordinary. Who cares? Anyway, the Star Lord asked us to take him back. We just need to complete the mission. Then come with us." The two of them spoke as if they were talking to a criminal, and they didn't care about Emoshur's feelings at all. Emoshur chuckled. "If I go just because you ask me to, wouldn't I lose face?" The teacher who followed them couldn't help but change his expression slightly. He whispered to Emoshur, "Teacher Mo and the others are giant dragons from Myriad Poison Planet. Be careful." Chapter 639. When the two dragons saw that Emoshur did not take their words seriously, they snorted coldly. "A mere teacher is a frog at the bottom of a well. He doesn't understand the power of our dragons." The other dragon waved his hand impatiently. "What's the point of talking so much with him? Just take him away." Seeing this, the dean hurriedly stood in front of Emoshur. "The two of you can talk things out. If you really want to take Teacher Mo away, you should at least get our Star Lord's permission. After all, Teacher Mo is a member of our Cloud Sea planet and is very important to us." However, before the dean could finish his words, his face suddenly turned green. This green color quickly spread from his face to his veins, forming dark green lines that looked like the veins of a leaf. The dean, a rank 2 super-evolved dragon, was poisoned in an instant. The other teacher was shocked and wanted to save the dean, but the dean took a step back and said hoarsely, "Don't touch me, there's poison." Only then did the teacher retract his hand. The giant dragon from the myriad poison star didn't pay any attention to the dean and strode towards Emoshur. "Teacher Mo, leave quickly. Don't worry about us, leave quickly." The dean knew that Emoshur had spatial abilities. If he wanted to escape, no one could stop him. Hearing this, the dragon of the myriad poison star chuckled. "The space within 100 kilometers has already been locked by our space lock chains. None of you can escape." Then he placed his right hand on Emoshur's shoulder. However, at that moment, bang! The myriad poison star dragon's body exploded into a bloody mist. There was no warning at all. Not only was the other myriad poison star dragon shocked, but even the dean and the others were shocked. Seeing this, the other myriad poison star dragon glared at Emoshur fiercely. "You dare kill my myriad poison star dragon? Courting death." As he spoke, a dark green smoke quickly spread out from his body. As the smoke spread, the leaves around him withered and rotted. Even the ground under his feet was covered in a layer of black. Even the ground was rotting quickly. Have you ever seen animals rot, plants rot, and soil rot? But at this moment, as the smoke spread out from his body, the ground under his feet was rapidly rotting. From this, It could be seen how toxic the smoke was. However, at this moment, bang! Just like before, the poisonous giant dragon's body quickly exploded into a bloody mist. As his body exploded, the rotten ground finally stopped spreading. Although there was still some residual dark green smoke ahead, Mo Shi completely ignored it. He walked up to the principal. He reached out and patted the dean's shoulder. The dean quickly dodged and said, "Don't touch me. I've been poisoned." However, Mo Shi's hand was already on his shoulder. In the next moment, a warm energy entered his body and quickly spread through his 8 extraordinary meridians. As this energy spread, he felt as if he was being illuminated by the sun. His entire body felt warm. After a short 3 minutes, the black color on his face quickly faded. When Mo Shi withdrew the energy from his body, he no longer felt the cold sensation of being poisoned. "It's fine now," Mo Shi said. The dean looked at his hands and legs from head to toe. The instructor next to him also said in disbelief, "The dean is fine." The dean hurriedly cupped his fist to Mo Shi. "Instructor Mo, thank you. I can't repay you for saving my life." Mo Shi did not wait for him to finish and waved his hand. "Dean, we're all colleagues. There's no need to say anything unnecessary." The dean nodded, but then said, "Instructor Mo, now that we've killed these two, if Myriad Poison Planet pursues the matter, we'll be in big trouble." Mo Shi shook his head. "Isn't it better if they pursue the matter? We can destroy Myriad Poison Planet while we're at it." The dean and the instructor looked at each other. Destroy Myriad Poison Planet while they're at it? Wasn't it too easy for him to say that? However, looking at Instructor Mo's strength, the 2 giant dragons from Myriad Poison Planet exploded into a bloody mist without even moving a finger. Even the dean, a rank 2 super-evolved giant dragon, did not know how Mo Shi did it. However, in his heart, Mo Shi's status had risen by another level. He had thought that Mo Shi was only a 5th or 6th grade super-evolved giant dragon. Now, it seemed he was wrong. Very wrong. Let alone a 6th grade ultra-evolved dragon, even a 10th grade ultra-evolved dragon couldn't do what Mo Shi had just done. He didn't even need to lift a finger to kill 2 3rd grade ultra-evolved dragons in an instant. When they thought of this, the 2 of them felt that Instructor Mo might actually be able to destroy Myriad Poison Planet while he was at it. How powerful was Instructor Mo? He was probably an ancient dragon at the very least. The 2 of them looked at each other again when they thought of the ancient dragon. Ancient dragons. They were existences that only existed in legends. They had not seen a single ancient dragon in the entire Cloud Sea planet, not including the entire Myriad Dragonstar region. Now, there was an ancient dragon hiding in Cloud Sea Academy. It felt like a dream to them. Mo Shi did not think much of the 2 dragons after he killed them. In fact, he was even looking forward to it. "Everyone from Myriad Poison Planet, come find me." The more people that came, the better. At the same time, on Myriad Poison Planet's master, Du Qianhua, was with several women with perfect figures and perfect faces. They were admiring the beautiful scenery of Myriad Poison Planet. Myriad Poison Heart Poison was extremely poisonous, but one had to admit that the scenery here was indeed beautiful. Moreover, it was the most beautiful star among the hundreds of nearby star regions. At this moment, a giant dragon came to report, "Master, bad news." Du Qianhua frowned. "Can't you see that I'm busy?" Scram. The giant dragon's heart trembled and he hurriedly retreated. After another 2 hours, Du Qianhua had finished admiring the scenery and returned to his poison palace. The giant dragon came to report again, "Master, bad news. Du Pingji and Du Yueji's life sensors have turned black." There was a type of life sensor in the Myriad Dragon Star region. No matter how far away you were, it could sense your life. Normally, the life sensor would be green, indicating that the life was normal. However, when the target was injured, the life sensor would turn red. When the target died, the life sensor would turn black. When Du Qianhua heard this, his face sank. Why didn't you report when the life sensor turned red? If they had reported it at that time, they might have been able to save the 2 of them. The reporting giant dragon shook his head. It didn't change. It turned from green to black in an instant. When Du Qianhua heard this, he frowned. If it didn't turn red, it meant that the two of them had been killed in an instant without being injured. He slammed the table beside him. Preposterous, investigate. Chapter 640. Recently, Cloud Sea Planet seemed to be peaceful and uneventful. Star-Lord Kong Hai was a soldier, and after he took office, he paid attention to strengthening the military. Coupled with the fact that Immortal had increased the military's combat strength, the Hu dragons didn't dare to attack everywhere. Therefore, the four seas were peaceful. However, on this day, no one noticed that over 10 scouts from Myriad Poison Planet had mixed in with the people who came to Cloud Sea Planet. Scouts were people who specially went to other planets to investigate everything about that planet. Or they would carry out some special missions on other planets. They would usually disguise themselves as tourists or merchants to travel between planets. They had all received a high degree of professional training, so it was very difficult for ordinary people to distinguish them. As soon as they arrived at Cloud Sea Star, they headed straight for Cloud Sea City. Because the two scouts had come to invite Immortal to Cloud Sea Planet, their mysterious deaths were definitely related to Cloud Sea City. It didn't take long for those scouts who disguised themselves as tourists to spread throughout the city. It had to be said that they were very good at gathering information. In just 5 days, they had gathered enough information in the huge city. Even though the Star-Lord knew that Immortal had killed the 2 dragons of Cloud Sea Planet and had been emphasizing that it must be kept a secret, these scouts still used all sorts of methods. They were bribed or threatened, and they were always able to get the information they needed. In the end, not only did they manage to gather enough information, they even managed to obtain the video of Immortal killing the 2 talent scouts in seconds. Among the 10 scouts, the leader was called the Inspector. When the Inspector showed the video to the rest of the talent scouts, they were all horrified. He didn't even have to do anything to kill them? Could he be in existence even stronger than the Long Yanshi? The legendary Long Yanshi? Many people think that the Long Yanshi really exists. In fact, the Long Yanshi is just a legend. There is no such thing as the Long Yanshi in history. Once Dragon Sense reaches level 10, the Long Yanshi won't be able to level up anymore. As for us giant dragons, our bodies are extremely tough. It would be child's play to think that you can kill a giant dragon with just your dragon will. Then what's going on? None of these talent scouts had any clue. Why don't we report this to the Star Master first and let him make a decision? This suggestion was unanimously approved by everyone, and the Inspector made the final decision. Soon, they reported the matter to the Star Master and sent the video. The Star-Lord of the Myriad Poison Planet frowned slightly when he saw the video. Based on his experience, Immortal should have used some kind of spatial technique. The Space Attribute Giant Dragon had many unimaginable skills. For example, they could use space collapse. When the space collapsed, any creature in the space would instantly explode, just like in the video. However, you wouldn't be able to see any signs of space collapsing from the outside because space was formless and formless. He only knew that Immortal had many attributes, but he didn't expect him to have the space attribute as well. In the end, the Star-Lord of the Myriad Poison Planet made up his mind. Let Du Kong go. He must bring him back. Du Kong was a general under the Star-Lord of the Myriad Poison Planet. She was one of those rare dual attribute dragons. Not only did she have the poison attribute, but she also had the space attribute. The combination of the poison attribute and the space attribute allowed her to be far more powerful than other dragons of the same grade. Under normal circumstances, a 4th grade ultra-evolved dragon like him could easily kill a 6th grade ultra-evolved dragon. That was why the Star-Lord of the Myriad Poison Planet was somewhat wary of Du Kong, even though he was a 6th grade ultra-evolved dragon. Du Kong was a female dragon with a seductive figure. She was one of those dragons who looked seductive but whose entire body was filled with poison. Even though she had many admirers on the Myriad Poison Planet, none of these admirers dared to pursue her. What a joke! Who would dare to touch a dragon covered in poison? Moreover, she was a 4th grade ultra-evolved dragon. Her power had already surpassed 99.9% of all dragons. Think about it. If you really became a couple with her, if someone else's girlfriend got angry, she would either ignore them or argue with them. If Du Kong got angry, she would silently poison you. This was going to cost him his life. Before Du Kong set off, the Star Lord of the Myriad Poison Planet warned him, "Your target is a dragon with many attributes. Moreover, he also has the space attribute. You must be careful." Du Kong smiled seductively. "You must be joking, Star Lord. The most powerful innate talent in history only had 3 attributes. Do you think he has many attributes?" The Star Lord of the Myriad Poison Planet nodded. "Of course. I also know that the most powerful innate talent in history only had 3 attributes. The reason he has so many attributes is very likely because he has used some sort of trick. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, poison, ice, and space. He has shown all of these attributes before." Du Kong chuckled when he heard this. That only means he is lucky to be able to obtain skill items with these attributes. However, no matter how many skill items with these attributes he has, they are not his own attributes. So, don't worry, Star Lord. Du Kong smiled seductively at the end of his speech. Even the Star Lord Du Qianhua felt like he couldn't take it anymore. In truth, Du Qianhua had a bad impression of Du Kong since a long time ago. However, he was a very cautious person, including when it came to pursuing women. When he understood Du Kong, he dismissed the idea of pursuing him. Even though he was the Star Lord, he was not to be trifled with. If he provoked Du Kong, he might not even know how he died. Du Kong might only be a 4th-grade super-evolved dragon, but if he used his unique attribute and the space attribute at the same time, it would be easy for him to kill a 6th-grade poison dragon. Soon, Du Kong left the Myriad Poison Planet. He blended into the tourists of the Cloud Sea Planet. As the most powerful talent scout on the Myriad Poison Planet, her disguise skills were also very strong. First, she tampered with her appearance. Her true appearance was simply too alluring. If she were to become a talent scout, she would attract too much attention. Thus, she first disguised herself as a very ordinary woman. He then arrived at the Cloud Sea Planet. After arriving at the Cloud Sea Planet, he went straight to the Cloud Sea City. After meeting up with the other talent scouts, he quickly found Immortal's residence. On this evening, Immortal was sitting on a rocking chair by the lake, slowly rocking. The setting sun spread across the surface of the lake, dyeing it crimson. The bamboo forest by the lake was also dyed crimson. In addition to the clouds in the sky being dyed pink, it was as if the entire world had been dyed crimson. A crimson woman slowly walked out from this crimson scene. Chapter 641. Under the crimson sunset, a woman in a pink dress slowly walked over on the path by the crimson lake. This woman's face was definitely comparable to Happy's, and her figure was comparable to Emma's. What was the ceiling of pure lust? Emma sure felt that this woman was it. This woman slowly walked towards Immortal. She had a charming smile on her face. With such a face, such a figure, and such a charming smile, not many men would reject her. "I am Du Kong from the Myriad Poison Star. If Instructor Mo is free, please come with me." He didn't have any ruthlessness on his face. Instead, he gave people the urge to fall in love with him. Immortal looked at this woman with a faint smile on his face. "All right, I'll go with you." Du Kong was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then he shook his head. He thought that it was some ruthless character that he had to deal with personally. He didn't expect that he would be moved with just one sentence. He was really disappointed. In fact, after Immortal killed the 2 envoys from the Myriad Poison Star, he knew that the Myriad Poison Star Lord wouldn't let it go. He would definitely send more people over. However, he didn't expect that the Myriad Poison Star Lord would send a woman. However, it didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman. As long as it was a human, he would go with them and destroy the Myriad Poison Star. Otherwise, even if he killed this woman, the Myriad Poison Star would still send more people over. Moreover, they would be stronger and more numerous. Troublesome. He might as well go with them and destroy the entire Myriad Poison Star in one go. According to Immortal's understanding, the Myriad Poison Star had about 50,000 poison attribute giant dragons. It should be enough for him to advance to rank 10. He might even be able to advance to become an ancient giant dragon. When he thought about ancient giant dragons, Immortal felt a little excited. Du Kong saw that Immortal had already stood up. He smiled charmingly and said, "Let's go." Immortal shouted towards the villa behind him, "Lei Ren, I'm going to the Myriad Poison Star. I'll be back in 1 or 2 days, or at most 1 or 2 months. Don't let anyone find me, understand?" Lei Ren, who was cultivating in the courtyard, was shocked when he heard Immortal's shout. Myriad Poison Star? Big Brother Imo is actually going to the Myriad Poison Star? This was incredible. He quickly jumped out of the courtyard. Immortal waved his hand at her and flew to the aircraft in the sky with the woman. Lei Ren cursed in his heart. At this moment, he couldn't catch up. Even if he caught up, there was nothing he could do. He could only inform the dean of this news as soon as possible. The expressions of the dean and the others also changed drastically. "Lei Ren, are you sure Instructor Imo left with a smile on his face?" Lei Ren nodded. Also, he said that he would be going to Myriad Poison Star for at least a day or 2, or at most a month. He told us not to look for him. The dean looked at the other instructors and pondered for a moment. Finally, he said, "I think Instructor Mo must have his own plans. With Instructor Mo's strength, we shouldn't worry about him. Perhaps he just wants to go to Myriad Poison Planet to broaden his horizons. As for those people on Myriad Poison Planet wanting to harm him, I don't think that's possible. Instructor Mo has mastered all kinds of attributes, especially the time and space attributes. It won't be that easy for those people from the Myriad Poison Star to kill him. Should we inform the Star Master about this?" The Star Master is also Instructor Mo's disciple. He has the right to know. Of course, we must inform the Star Master about this. Thus, the dean reported this matter to the Star Master, Kong Hai. When Kong Hai heard about this, he was shocked at first. Then he quickly gathered his strategists for a discussion. However, after much discussion, the outcome was the same as what the dean had said. Since Immortal had been so confident at the time, they didn't need to panic. Moreover, Kong Hai had absolute trust in Instructor Mo. He believed that with Instructor Mo's ability, if the Myriad Poison Star tried to force him to stay, the Myriad Poison Star would suffer in the end. At the same time, Immortal and Du Kong had already boarded the spaceship in the sky. Du Kong said with a hint of mockery, "Did you just say that it would take at least a day or 2, or at most a month or 2 to return?" Immortal nodded and asked seriously, "Is there something wrong?" Du Kong chuckled. "Let me tell you a secret. No one who goes to Myriad Poison Star leaves alive." After he finished speaking, he looked at Immortal's face as if he wanted to see a trace of fear on Immortal's face. However, Immortal only responded with a simple, "Oh." Then, he turned his head to admire the beautiful scenery below. This slightly surprised Du Kong. This guy seemed to have a card up his sleeve. However, it was obvious that this guy wasn't confident. He was just blindly arrogant. What kind of place was Myriad Poison Star? Among the hundreds of planets nearby, Myriad Poison Star was like hell. Even if you were a rank 5, 6, or 7 super-evolved dragon, so what? Even the air on Myriad Poison Star was poisonous. Once you arrived at Myriad Poison Star, you would be poisoned. The energy in your body would be very sluggish. If you forced it, your meridians would break and you would die. Under such circumstances, even if you were strong, what could you do? The distance from Myriad Poison Star to Cloud Sea Planet was quite far. If they flew there directly, it would take at least 3 to 4 days. However, in highly developed space civilizations, there were wormholes connecting them. These wormholes were called Big Bug Bridges. Immortal and Du Kong took the spaceship and arrived at the Big Bug Bridge closest to Cloud Sea Planet. After paying 1,000 dragon coins, they passed through the Big Bug Bridge and arrived at the Big Bug Bridge near Myriad Poison Star. After flying for another half an hour, they finally arrived at Myriad Poison Star. As soon as they entered Myriad Poison Star's atmosphere, they could see that the entire Myriad Poison Star was shrouded in clouds of various colors. There were red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black, white, and gray. If one looked at Myriad Poison Star from space, it would look like a big colorful ball. They passed through a large purple cloud. When they looked at the ground again, they saw that the ground below was covered with mountains and trees. Almost all of these trees were purple. However, the degree of purple varied. Some were deep purple, some were light purple, and some were purplish red. Even the water of a large lake below was purple. After passing through this purple forest, they arrived at a golden plain. Everything here seemed to be golden in color. All the trees and flowers were golden in color, including the lake water. Immortal had learned that this was because there were microbes of various colors in the lake water. Therefore, from above, it looked like the lake water was the same color. At the center of this golden plain was a city. The scale of this city was far inferior to Cloud Sea Planet's Cloud Sea Planet. After all, Cloud Sea Planet had over 50 million people living in it. The total population of Myriad Poison Star was only around 50,000. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.